Centuries ago, a man named Vincent van Gogh walked the earth. He lived in near total isolation, plagued by poverty, suffering through the deep, quiet torment of a world that simply could not comprehend what he saw. He painted with an urgent, burning fire, pouring his very soul onto the canvas. Yet when he closed his eyes for the last time, he had sold only a single painting. He died believing he was a failure. Today, the world looks at his brushstrokes with absolute awe, recognizing the genius that was entirely invisible to his peers. He didn't paint to get rich. He painted because he had to create. For the last 54 years, I have walked a very similar, solitary path. I have spent over half a century quietly auditing the deep structures of human history, tracking the invisible grid lines of our existence, and decoding the profound truths of our lineage. I am standing near the horizon of my own life now, and like the old masters, I have no illusions of grand rewards, flashing lights, or sudden notoriety while I am here. My work is not about chasing the algorithms of YouTube or seeking fame on Amazon with my books and music. For me, creation is a necessity. It is the raw desire to lay out the truth before the clock runs out. I am doing this so that after I am gone, the pieces of the puzzle will finally remain for those ready to see them. I am mapping the undeniable connection between our modern human genome and the deliberate genetic engineering of the Anunnaki, tracing the ancient blueprint from the creation of Adamu to the birth of Adapa, synthesized through the direct seed of Enki. I don't expect to see the full harvest of these seeds I am planting. If my work secures a better future for my children, that is a blessing. But my immediate goal is simply to keep digging. To help me push further, I have set up a Patreon. It isn't to provide me with a paycheck. It is a way for those who recognize the sheer weight of this effort to help me afford the specialized tools and audio equipment needed to research deeper and bring these findings to light with the clarity they deserve. Welcome to episode 7. Let us look at the canvas of time and finally read the layout of the world. To understand where we are going, we have to look at where we started. On your screen right now is the master chart we established in episode 6. This is our grand macro view, a single continuous line mapping the entire 445,000 years of humanity's true footprint on this planet. But because that vast expanse of time is so immense, the charts we are moving into next are going to break that massive timeline down into smaller, highly detailed units of time, zooming into the specific epochs that define our current age. What you are seeing on your screen now is a deliberate contrast. On one hand, you have the sleek, cinematic elegance of automated AI imagery, beautiful, polished, and smooth. On the other hand, you have my own hand-drawn charts, built meticulously on a simple grid. They may look rudimentary compared to modern graphic design, but I assure you, their true beauty lies in the profound, buried history they reveal. While mainstream academia keeps you trapped in a fragmented loop, these charts map Earth's true time in a strict, unyielding, linear fashion. I am charting humanity's actual existence, pulling directly from the primary historical records left to us, the Sumerian cuneiform tablets. Over the past 250 years, archaeological digs have pulled these stones from the dirt, and brilliant translators have spent painstaking, meticulous lifetimes converting them into English so the truth could finally be read. Our timeline begins at the absolute foundation, the moment Enki splashed down in the Persian Gulf 445,000 years ago, and carries it straight through the millennia to where we stand today in what we call 2026 CE. But as you look at this vast expanse of time, you have to understand that the calendar we use today is not a natural clock. It is a labyrinth. Our timeline has been deeply convoluted, and our tracking of years has been intentionally mixed up. In fact, the very first time our calendar was altered by design goes back to the dawn of the Anunnaki administration, when the world was split into distinct regions under the lineage of Enki and Enlil. Time itself became a weapon of control. The original cosmic calendar, attuned to the divine proportions of 360 days a year, matching the 360 degrees of a perfect circle, was intentionally fractured. As the archontic influences took hold, they disrupted the harmonious relationship between the solar year and the lunar cycles. By introducing artificial shifts and staggering the months, they created a desynchronization. They separated humanity from the natural frequencies of the earth and the cosmos, ensuring that our festivals, our calculations, and our historical memory would forever be out of sync, making it nearly impossible for us to look backward and trace our own origins. To understand how our linear timeline was shattered, we have to address the rules of mainstream astrophysics, specifically Kepler's first and second laws of planetary motion. Institutional science uses these laws to describe a stable, predictable solar system. Kepler's first law states that planets move in smooth ellipses or ovals, with the Sun sitting off-center at a fixed point. Because the Sun is off-center, the planet naturally gets closer to it at one point in its year and farther away at another. This brings us to Kepler's second law, which claims that a line connecting a planet to the Sun sweeps out equal areas in equal intervals of time. In plain English, the establishment tells us that when an object is far out in the deep, cold reaches of space, it slows down to a crawl. But as it falls closer to the Sun, gravity acts like a cosmic whip, accelerating the object to incredible speeds. They use complex mathematics to convince us that the spatial area covered is perfectly equal, treating the universe like an undisturbed, perpetual grandfather clock. But academia has a massive blind spot. They treat these formulas as absolute truth, just like they do with Einstein's theory of relativity or Newton's concepts of gravity. Yet, if you ask the world's smartest institutional scientists to explain what gravity actually is, they can't do it. They don't know if it's a bending of space, or if it is deeply rooted in the electromagnetic and dielectric fields of the Earth itself. They force feed us these rigid models to maintain an illusion of permanent stability and to keep us blind to history. This is exactly why I am keeping my teardrop diagram and why I refuse to replicate Kepler's smooth, closed loop. Kepler's math only works if a planet is completely isolated and undisturbed. But human history and the Sumerian records tell a completely different story, a story of catastrophism and deliberate intervention. We are tracking a massive, highly eccentric celestial body. It spends roughly 3,700 years moving at a microscopic crawl through the dark, invisible void of deep space. But when it finally falls into our inner solar system, it doesn't follow a smooth, polite ellipse. It pinches into a violent teardrop trajectory, whipping around the sharp point of the Sun in a tight, catastrophic 52-year window. This extreme whiplash is the exact period running from the upheavals of the Exodus in 1058 BCE straight to Joshua's long day, where its electromagnetic field physically interacted with the Earth, causing the Sun to stand still. Time on the opposite side of a sun is absolutely not equal in reality. By maintaining my teardrop model, we expose the difference between a textbook vacuum and a raw historical intervention. We aren't modeling a clock that is ticking perfectly. We are documenting the exact moment the gears were manipulated. As we move deeper into this analysis, we must address how this timeline ties into the structural layout of our history. The deliberate manipulation of our calendar by archontic forces is something we fully documented in episode 6 of this Wood Wide Web series. If you need a thorough explanation of that manipulation, I highly encourage you to go back and watch or rewatch episode 6. It is vital to understanding exactly why I am firmly sticking to this teardrop model. When you look at this golden chart, we are showing a full great year, but we are specifically highlighting the second half of it. In this second half, we are tracing the long, dramatic expansion of time it takes for Nibiru to complete its orbit around the Sun. By utilizing the teardrop shape, we visually demonstrate the extreme accelerated velocity this celestial body experiences the closer it gets to the Sun. And in doing this, we are intentionally ignoring Kepler's second law. We have to, because textbook orbital mechanics completely fail to fit the actual reality of what occurred in human history. Let us look at the raw data on the chart. By following the true linear path, we place the Great Deluge, the global flood, right at the 120th Shar, which calculates precisely to 10,975 BCE. From that anchor point, my chart displays all 6 of the major astrological ages of our current epoch, moving systematically through Leo, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, and into Pisces. Notice the exact transition point where the timeline switches from BCE to CE. This is where we mark the birth of Christ. While it isn't physically written on the grid, the historical truth is that his birth aligns precisely at 64 BCE, which marks the true astronomical beginning of the age of Pisces. Now I want to pause here and address something very specific, particularly for the Christians watching this who might mistakenly think my work is anti-Christ. It is not. In fact, over the past 14 months of auditing this forensic data, I have come to possess a deeper, more profound respect for Jesus than I ever had in my entire life, even during the years when I actively claimed the label of a Christian. But I don't believe Christ ever wanted us to simply claim a label. That name, Christian, was a tag invented by humanity, not by him. What he actually asked of us was to open our ears, to listen, and to live out the truth laid down in the red letters of the New Testament. My work is not a rejection of him, it is an amplification of the profound reality of his arrival. If the folks who claim to be Christians today could open their hearts, drop the institutional programming, and truly use their eyes to see and ears to hear, they would discover an entirely new level of love, admiration, and revolutionary respect for the man we know as Jesus Christ. He stands as a towering, pivotal reality on this timeline. Now look back at the vertical columns on your screen. On the left side, we have the sharp marker for the Exodus at 1058 BCE. Just 52 years later, moving to the right, we have our next major notation, the day the sun stood still for Joshua. This 52-year gap is the exact violent whiplash window of the teardrop orbit. Finally, as we look to the modern end of the chart, we mark the closing of the Pisces era, carrying us to where we stand today in 2026, and looking toward the culmination at 2060 CE. But notice that the true orbit of Nibiru actually extends outward, passing right through the edge of Pisces and pushing directly into the age of Aquarius. We intentionally left the far left and far right columns of this chart blank to represent that open, unfolding threshold. The data is locked into the grid, and the grid does not lie.